Welcome back to Breakdown. Today is October 27th, 2021, and we're here to talk about the SEC versus the Big Ten, and specifically the big game this weekend, JJ. Michigan, Michigan State. You ready for some football?
I'm ready for the first top 10 matchup between the two schools since 1964.
1964, October 10th. How old were you then?
Well, negative 24.
Okay, well, all right then. The state of Michigan is getting excited about the game, and I hope everyone out there is as well. I'm going to ask a few questions of you, JJ. I want to get your sporting analysis of what's going on with between this game. My first question is, how impressed are you with the running back tandem of Haskin and Karam for U of M?
Yeah, Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins has been the dynamic duo for Michigan. They've been the offense for Michigan essentially. Lightning and Thunder, Thunder and Lightning. I've been impressed with both of them. Haskins is the 6'1" senior, averaging almost 5 yards a carry, and Corum is the dynamic home run threat sophomore.
Okay. Uh, Speed kills, Jay. That's a phrase that they use in football. Speed kill. Which team, Michigan or Michigan State, has more team speed at the skilled positions?
I think it would be pretty close. I think it depends on which skill positions you're breaking it down into. Michigan State, I think, has faster receivers. Michigan's receivers, while bigger than Michigan State's receivers, struggle to consistently create separation, and that's a feather in Michigan State's cap. I do think Blake Corum is the fastest running back that either team has. I think he's faster than Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is a dynamic back himself, but if we're just going on speed, I would say Michigan State might have the slight edge for all the collective skill positions.
Okay. What's your take on sophomore quarterback for Michigan State, Peyton Thorne?
Peyton Thorne, he's like a steady, like game manager plus, I'd say. He's he's really good at getting the ball into the hands of his playmakers and letting them make a lot of yards after the catch. And you have Jalen Naylor and Jaden Reed.
Okay. Speaking of Naylor and Reed, you had said that you thought Michigan's speed was pretty good. I think Naylor and Reed has I think they have that it thing going for them, and I like those two guys quite a bit. Plus, I like Peyton Thorne quite a bit too, and we haven't even talked about another guy that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But what's your take on the Michigan State's wide receiver? In any evaluation whatsoever of Naylor and Reed?
Jalen Naylor is pretty good. He's a press coverage beater. He's 22nd in the nation in yards per reception, and 65th in the country in total yards with 512. But I think the Western Michigan transfer Jaden Reed, and the former high school teammate of Peyton Thorne, I think he's the guy that you really have to account for. He's ninth in the nation in yards per reception with 21 yards, and 39th in the nation in total yards with 562. So
I'll say, okay, so Karam and Haskin, you called them Thunder and Lightning. I guess I'm going to call Naylor and Reed Thunder and Lightning and Green, because we're going to see. Who's going to have the bigger impact? The running backs from U of M or the receivers from Spartan Nation?
I think the answer to that lies the outcome for the game.
And so save that for the end, because I'll ask you for that at the end then. Okay, we mentioned Michigan State's quarterback. We mentioned Michigan State's receiver. I want to talk about the unsung heroes in this game. Who could end up being an unsung hero for Michigan?
It's odd to say it because I think he's probably going to be an All American, but I would say Daxton Hill doesn't necessarily get the recognition that he gets. It's Aiden that he deserves, I should say. It's Aiden Hutchinson's defense. There's a lot of talk about how Michigan has been doing on the line of scrimmage, and they have one of the best offensive lines in the country and one of the best front sevens in the country, and Hutchinson anchors that front seven. But I think a lot of the determination for Michigan's future success is resting on the shoulders of Daxton Hill, the safety. I think he's very versatile. He can come up into the box and blitz or do a lot of things in that respect, or he can go back and give Michigan a double high safety look. But I think in Michigan's transition from uh, a press man coverage under Don Brown last year to a more shallow, soft zone coverage, I think Daxton Hill has taken on a lot of responsibility, and I think
So Mr. Hill is going to be your unsung hero for the Wolverines.
well, he would be the pick if I could get away with it. He's a little too highly touted for him to be unsung.
Okay.
So I guess that would have to be their leading receiver, Cornelius Johnson. He's not bad when it comes to yards per reception himself, averaging 18. He's their big play threat on the season. He's a 6'3" big body receiver, and he's gonna have to be Caden McNamara's safety valve.
Okay. You mentioned McNamara. But no, I'm gonna go back. I want to go to the Michigan State unsung hero. You got an unsung hero for Michigan State?
I would say it's their third receiver, the sophomore. He's a little bit bigger. He presents a different dynamic than either Reed or Naylor. Trey Mosley.
Trey Mosley. Okay. Can be an unsung hero.
Well, especially against Michigan, I think their third receiver is going to probably be better than Michigan's third defensive back, third cornerback. So I think that's a matchup that they can exploit.
And Michigan is mostly going to be playing man to man.
No, that was last year under Don
Okay,
Brown.
that's right. That's right. They're going to be playing the zone mostly this year.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Uh, a quick hit on Michigan State's. Well, you know what? I want to stay with Michigan's quarterback, McNamara.
Okay.
If the Spartans are able to stop or significantly slow down the Wolverines' running game, because that's how they operate, is their running game. If they can slow down the running game or stop the running game, can McNamara win the game with his arm for Michigan?
I don't have a lot of faith in Cade McNamara. I think he's mostly a game manager. And ever since Ronnie Bell went down, their dynamic, big play receivers that can create separation have been limited. However, Michigan State has, I believe, the 121st best pass defense. So this might be an opportunity. This might be a defense where Cade McNamara can win the game with his arm. But I wouldn't necessarily count on that. I do think that if Michigan State were to stifle Michigan's run game, Michigan would be in a lot of trouble.
Let me ask you a question from a defensive perspective. Is it easier to get a defense to scheme against Michigan's offense, or is it easier to get a defense to scheme against Michigan State's offense?
That's a good question. Michigan is the more efficiently sound offense. Their FEI, free mile efficiency index, is pretty substantial. I think it's fifth in the nation, whereas Michigan State's is 50th. And what Michigan brings to the table is consistency. They don't have the home run hitters and the big play makers outside of Blake Corum. He can do that from the running back position, or running a wheel route out of the backfield. That's something that he's capable of doing. But outside of him, um, they don't have a lot of home run threats. Michigan State has that, but Michigan State doesn't have the consistency. They've stalled a few times against Nebraska. I believe Peyton Thorne threw for under 200 yards. Same thing against Indiana, and I think I would prefer to scheme against Michigan's offense than Michigan State's offense.
I would too. Why would you rather do that? Huh?
Mm, I think I would, just because Michigan, as effective and efficient as they are, um, I just I think they don't have the versatility that Michigan State has.
If you were Michigan State, would you load up the box against Michigan?
No, because Michigan State has the 121st best passing defense. I don't think that they can afford to do that. I think Michigan does have the fifth most efficient offense, adjusted for um, opponent and non-garbage time. So I don't think Michigan State has the ability to do that based on their secondary.
Okay.
So I wouldn't necessarily do that.
Do you expect any team Saturday to come out and do something that they don't typically do? I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think they're going to be themselves, or are they going to get out of their box and try something new? And if so, I mean, maybe not. I mean, you're 7-0, so why even do something like that? But if something like that were to happen, is there a team that you think would be more likely to do something like that?
Well, I think Michigan State has the more creative play caller, but Michigan has the ability to do that in their backup quarterback, JJ McCarthy.
True.
He's incredibly dynamic.
I agree.
A run threat and a passing threat. I think he could provide a look that Michigan State couldn't necessarily prepare for. But Michigan's offense, it's so hard to tell. Michigan far and away has the best special teams in America. So they don't have.
They do?
Yeah, Michigan State is ranked 18th in special teams, based on the Football Power Index adjusted rankings. Michigan State's is 18th and Michigan's is number 1. And
Interesting.
Yeah, so their field position, they don't score. They score more points than Michigan State on average, but they don't generate as much total offense as Michigan State. But they also have a much more favorable starting point on almost all possessions. So,
how critical would the home field be?
it'll be pretty critical. I do think that Michigan will have a little bit of experience dealing with that. Going into Nebraska and facing that home crowd, and then going into Camp Randall in Wisconsin and facing that home field. But there is a level of vitriol that I think Michigan State does reserve for Michigan that those other schools didn't. So it might be a more impactful advantage Michigan State has, but I don't know. Michigan still is a 4-point favorite on the road, so we'll have to see.
Yes, they are. Let me ask you a question. How long has Jim Harbaugh been coaching Michigan now?
I believe this will be a 7th season.
This is year 7. And his record against Michigan State is 3-3.
Yeah.
What's his record against Ohio State?
Oh.
Okay.
0-4.
0-7. 0-7. If Michigan State go
0-6.
I'm sorry, yeah. Okay. If Jim Harbaugh goes 10-2 this year, would you consider that this regular season? Would you consider that a good year?
It would be a good year in a vacuum, but depends on what that 10-2 who that's against. If the 10-2 is a loss to Penn State and Indiana, and he beats Michigan State and Ohio State, I'll say that's an exceptional year for him.
If that 10-2, those two losses come, one in East Lansing and the other one at home against that team down south, I think the Ohio State University, how would the fans of you? How would U of M fans treat Mr. Harbaugh, Coach Harbaugh, in your mind, in your thinking?
Oh, I don't think that they're necessarily a monolith. I mean, you have a contingent of the fan base that wants him out right now, and then there's a contingent that thinks that he needs more time and just the right quarterback. So I think that that would be a similar divide if the outcome was him losing to the two biggest rivals Michigan has.
Who is for which team is this a bigger game for the Michigan State team? I won't. Yeah, for which team or for which coach? It doesn't matter. To whom is this a bigger game? What they say in the SEC, it just mean more. For which team does this game just mean more?
Well, I think Michigan is Michigan State's biggest rival, and Ohio State is Michigan's biggest rival. So in that respect, I would say that it means more to Michigan State as a collective.
Okay.
But when it comes to individuals, it means more to Jim Harbaugh than it does to any other individual.
Okay.
On the Michigan State side, so
Let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say Michigan State and Michigan both go 11-1. Michigan's loss is against Michigan State. Michigan State loss is against Michigan. I mean, it's against Ohio State. I'm not sure how that shake out as far as who would get the represent the East.
Michigan State would.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know. They would both have one loss in the conference.
And then Ohio State would have one loss. Michigan State would have one loss in Michigan. But Ohio State has one loss out of conference.
I know, but that doesn't matter as far as who represents the conference in the.
Well, how do they determine it?
There's the tiebreaker. I don't really know what those tiebreakers.
Well, I think Ohio State would be lower in the polls and things by virtue of having two losses.
That doesn't matter at all. The polls is way down at the tiebreaker. I think how you. Well, you know what? I won't even get into that right now because it's kind of convoluted and it may be a moot issue. But I brought that up for this purpose. If they are 1-1, the three teams, would Jim Harbaugh be on the hot seat for losing to Ohio State? I mean, for losing to Michigan State?
Absolutely not. And there's a scenario in which that Michigan wouldn't make it to the Big Ten championship game, and they can still make it to the college football playoff. In that, no.
Say that again.
There's a scenario that exists in which Michigan wouldn't make it to the Big Ten championship game, and Michigan could still make it to the college football playoff.
How likely is that scenario to play out? And tell me what that scenario is.
Oh, I don't. The likelihood is, I don't know. I mean, okay. It's not unlikely. It's not super unlikely. I don't think it's not unrealistic or anything. But I think the scenario is that Alabama sustains a loss to Auburn and then,
which is and
then loses to Georgia, and there's only one SEC team. Oklahoma loses in the Big 12 championship game. Cincinnati, looks mediocre.
Okay.
I mean, I think that it doesn't take that much. It would just because the ACC is not getting a team, man.
Wake Forest is 7-0.
The ACC is not getting a team, man.
They got if Wake Forest had the name Clemson on their jersey and they were 7-0.
If they had the name Clemson on their jersey and they were 7-0, they would be ranked number 1 in the country. I think right now they're ranked like 16th or something. So Wake Forest isn't getting in. I mean, Cincinnati isn't even in the Power 5 structure, and they're in the top 2. Wake Forest doesn't have the legitimacy. So the ACC isn't getting a team in, and Oklahoma, if they sustain a loss at the wrong time, the Big 12 could feasibly not get anybody in. And if Oregon loses again,
Yeah, the Big 12, Oklahoma is undefeated, but they have looked shaky in numerous games. I can't imagine them going through the season undefeated. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. We'll see. JJ, make me an argument for Michigan winning the game Saturday.
Oh, well, Michigan has a better defense than Nebraska or Indiana. Nebraska's defense is 43rd in the nation, and Indiana's 55th. Other than that, Michigan State hasn't played a team that was in the top 75 in defense I think Miami is like 76th, and that's their third best and best team that they played. And you saw how they struggled against Nebraska and Indiana. Michigan's defense is much better than either one of those teams. So it could just be another one of those games where the offense isn't as consistent. And
So your argument in this is for Michigan winning is based on their defense. I'm just trying to narrow it down a little bit.
yeah,
Primarily their defense. Uh, Make an argument for Michigan State winning the game Saturday.
well, Michigan State will have the most dynamic offense that Michigan has to face. Um, Michigan struggled with Rutgers.
What? What?
There is a theory that part of the reason Michigan's defense is ranked so high currently is because of their weaker strength of schedule. Michigan State had a 71st best strength of schedule in the country, and Michigan had an even worse at 73rd best. So, I mean, it's possible that the sample size might have artificially inflated Michigan's defense. So Michigan State could capitalize on that, exploit their second and third corners, and not let Daxton Hill roam up to the line of scrimmage, make him play back. If they can get explosive plays and they can mitigate Aiden Hutchinson and Michigan's pass rush and their front seven, Michigan State has a very good chance of beating Michigan.
If Michigan State's going to win, this game is the big stage. It's the bright lights. Things get amplified when you step out on the big stage. If the guy we have not mentioned all day today, JJ, Kenneth Walker III, if he produced 150 yards, is he in New York on the day they announce the Heisman?
Well, he might be. He's second in the nation in rushing right now. He definitely has opportunity. I mean, he has more opportunity for Heisman moments than any other running back. I would imagine he has Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State left, and then the Big Ten championship game potentially. I mean, he easily could.
What does he need? What does he need to do? How many yards does he need to get to stay in that conversation right now against Michigan?
He either needs to have a dynamic performance where he carries Michigan State, and they lose. But if Michigan State wins, he could have a down game. There are multiple opportunities in his future. He'll still have, as long as he gets over 40 yards or whatever, he'll still have over 1,000 on the season. So
what would be the key for Michigan State to win the game? I mean, you've gone through a lot of things. You mentioned about their offense being more diversified than Michigan has run up against before. What players out there do you think need to perform at a high level in order for Michigan State to have a shot? And I'm going to ask you that same thing on Michigan as well. But let's do Michigan State first.
well, Michigan State would need their offensive line to hold up against Michigan's pass rush, and then they would need their linebackers and defensive line to be able to not let Michigan dominate the time of possession and dominate with their run game.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be a line of scrimmage.
They'll win it in the trenches. What about Michigan? Who or what specifically must Michigan do to win? They're going to be the road team.
Yeah, for Michigan, they're going to need guys like Dalen Baldwin, Cornelius Johnson, Donovan Edwards. They're just going to need to have a more explosive offense than normal. I think those guys will need to be able to exploit Michigan State's porous pass defense. And, I mean, Cade McNamara will have to be a Wilton Spate type of game manager and not a Shea Patterson type of game manager for Michigan.
If Michigan State scores 24 points, do they win the game?
I don't think so. Michigan's been averaging 38 points per game. Michigan State's been averaging 34. I don't think 24.
If Michigan State scores, I'll just say this. I'm not going to get on a particular team. I'm going to come down to your picks and your over and under pick.
Okay.
The spread is 4 points. Is it 4.5? Still 4?
It went from 4.5, I think, down to 4.
Okay, okay. Who you got at 4 points? Would you give 4? Would you take 4?
Personally, I would stay away.
Well, if you want to help your old man out who wants to get in on the action, what advice would you give him?
I would wait for it to get to 4.5. Well, I mean, if it's 4.5, I think I would take Michigan State. I think it's gonna be close, but if it's 4.5, I think I might lean Michigan State.
Okay, but if it stays at 4, you would give the 4.
I mean, 4 could end in a push. I guess I'd still. I don't know. 4, I'd feel a little bit more worrisome taking anyone, but
I'll say this: Michigan State up by 10 at halftime. The question is, will their defense become worn down by Michigan's run game? This is my prediction.
well, I don't think that Michigan State will be up by 10 at halftime. To be honest, but okay. Just the way you presented it, I was like, I was confused. But
no, this is my take. I'm predicting Michigan State to be up by 10 at half, and if their defense doesn't get worn down, they win the game. If their defense gets worn down in the fourth quarter, it can be trouble. That's my take. Over and under. How many points will get scored in this game? I don't know what the over and under is right now, but if you had to guess a number, what would you say?
I might go 55.
Okay. I'm going to go 60, but I don't know. Okay, JJ, we got a couple of minutes left, and it's still the Big Ten SEC. I want to talk about a couple of things, but I'm only going to talk about one of them. I want to know if you have anything that you want to talk about.
No.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Well, since this is the breakdown, SEC versus the Big Ten, I'm going to hit the SEC for a quick minute and talk about LSU. They're going to have a new coach next year. Could that new coach be a current coach in East Lansing, Mel Tucker?
I mean, it's certainly possible, but I would imagine LSU would have their sights set on someone that has a longer track record of success than Mel Tucker's at this point.
Okay. I think he will be in the conversation. I don't know if he will end up being the LSU coach. Is that a good job, LSU?
LSU's a great job, I think.
What makes it a great job?
I mean, guys like Ed Orgeron and Les Miles have won championships there. I don't think that you have to be a particularly good coach. I think it's just such a fertile recruiting base that if you can delegate your offensive and defensive coordinating properly and lock down the state as it pertains to recruiting, you don't have to leave. I mean, you can really.
And Texas is so close too. But I agree with you. LSU, the state of LSU per capita, they say Ohio State and Florida and Georgia. LSU is the state that if LSU can build a fence around that state, they are going to be in the conversation. At least they should be in the conversation every year. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's out there. Well, JJ, you're taking 4.5 in Michigan State. You're giving 4 if you're Michigan to win. I'm gonna give you my pick. The spread is 4. I pick Michigan State to win it. They go up big in the first half and they hold on by more than 4. That's my take.
Okay.
You sure you don't have anything before we close?
I have nothing. I'm just excited for this game, honestly.
All right. WPS, thanks everyone for tuning in, checking out, listening to us. Leave a comment down below in the comment section. Give us a thumbs up. And can't wait to 1 o'clock Saturday come.
Who dat?
Go white. Go green. Go green, go white.